Cameltry, a name that invokes images of growing large perennial plants whose eventual fruit would end up being comprised entirely of dromedaries. And if you thought that's what this game is about, you are completely wrong. But that's entirely because of this game's confusing name. Short of the weird reworking of the logo of the game and an occasional random background image, there's no actual camels or trees in this game. In fact, it's a game about playing as a little blue marble. If they wanted to give it an actual sensible name, they could have called it Marble Madness. Oh, wait. But that actually draws a pretty interesting comparison because it is somewhat functionally similar to Marble Madness, but it feels like it draws closer relation to another ball game. Now, there is a story to this game, but it's only in like 2 lines of dialogue at the ending of the hardest route in this game, and it makes no sense. So basically, you're a blue marble on a mission. Figure it out. And figure it out, I in fact did. This is an interesting little game. It is similar to the aforementioned Marble Madness, but it's closer resembling Monkey Ball, of all things. Basically, you have your little blue marble, and you have to navigate it through a maze to get to the end. The real trick about this game is you don't have any actual functional control over your marble. Instead, you tilt the world around it to try and navigate the ball through it. The ball is actually more or less stationary, outside of ricocheting off a piece of environment. And that actually is a fairly interesting concept. The controls are incredibly simple. This game would originally use a dial to control, but as I'm playing this on the PS2 Taito Legends 2 compilation, you use the control stick to rotate the world around you, and you press the square button to shake the world. And all shaking really does is it makes your little marble jump, which allows it to gain a little bit of momentum to destroy breakable blocks around it, which can be beneficial or detrimental depending on the level layout, which actually makes a pretty interesting idea. You might not necessarily want to use these same tactics in one specific situation as you will in another, simply because they rework the mechanics ever so slightly. For example, you might run into a situation where one breakable block contains an additional power-up for more time on your timer, whereas another one might deduct time if you break it. So you really have to understand when you want to actually have your ball jump. But that's not necessarily quite as important as it is to try and avoid actually making contact with anything, because this is a game that is entirely on a timer. Your goal is to get to the end within a set period of time, and the faster you do, the more time is allotted to your next level. Essentially, whatever leftover time you have gets carried over and added to whatever base time the next level would have. So it behooves you to hurry through the level as fast as possible. However, coming into contact with anything actually slows you down. Running into a wall makes you slowly sort of bounce off it and requires you to slowly gain your momentum back. Having to stop and destroy a block to continue passing through the area, that slows you down. There are obstacles such as stoplights that will actually forcibly make you stop until they change so you can continue. Or there's directional arrows which will send you in completely opposite directions, or sometimes even give you a speed boost. But that's actually pretty tricky as well, because they can lead you into some really nasty situations as well. So really, if you want to get great at Cameltry, you must master the art of free falling, because it's when you finally come into contact with anything that it actually becomes a problem. Whereas if you stay in prominent free fall, the small moments where you're required to actually slow yourself down to destroy an obstacle or whatever will not have as great an impact on your overall time. And that in turn makes it an amazing execution challenge, because you can see exactly what you need to do, but you have to work around the physics and your ball's momentum and just how your ball reacts to certain bits of environment, because certain bits will make it like bounce off in a different direction. Like there are these bumpers that make the most obnoxious sound ever when you hit them, and they're just terrible. I think that's part of the joy of Cameltry, is just finding your way through this maze and trying to master the art of freefall. And if that weren't enough, some of the levels are actually designed with multiple paths. So one might be faster, but it has a lot more hazards, like blocks that will deduct time from you. Whereas you can take the slower one, but you're guaranteed less time. And that's only going to really hit home through repeat playthroughs. That makes this a really fun game to just pick up and play over and over again. And the fact that it's an arcade game means, of course, you're going after high scores all the time. Not to mention, there's not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 different worlds to play through, and each world has about 10 levels to it. Although I will say that 4th world was designed by a complete sadist. Every level in this game likes to modify its own obstacles and concepts to give you a slightly different experience than your previous level, but the last world, not only does it feel like they designed those levels to be really, really mean, but they oftentimes will block the exit with just little obnoxious things that makes it damn near impossible to get. It's incredibly satisfying when you get it, but up to that point, that last world is frustrating. But the other 3 worlds are really fun to play. The only thing I find weird about this, however, is when you complete a world, the game ends. Like, it just sends you to a game over, congratulations, you beat the game screen, even though you've only finished one of the worlds. You don't advance to the next one. That requires you to put in an extra quarter or whatever. That's a bizarre design choice. But I suppose it is an arcade game. It's designed to steal your quarters, and trust me, it is difficult. If it wasn't for the fact that this compilation allows me to use unlimited quarters, should I choose, I would not have been able to play through this game in its entirety. But that said, it's incredibly challenging, it's very, very fun, and it's a pretty unique concept. Even though you can see other games that have sort of a get out of the maze as fast as possible, stuff like Marble Madness, around that time you kind of have to understand that there wasn't really anything quite like this. Because yeah, Marble Madness is sort of similar, but this is a game where you don't move your character. You shape the world around it instead, and it simply reacts. And something about that even today just feels mind-blowing to me. Brilliant concept, brilliant. Now the presentation to Cameltry it's complicated. Visually, it likes to take a very simplistic design direction in terms of your marble design and the actual environments themselves. And I think that benefits the rather simplistic mechanics sort of evolving and modifying themselves over time. It works quite well. However, the backgrounds are just weird, mangled, jumbled, scrolling colors and images of like occasionally a camel, which is like the one camel in this game, an angry clock. I think I saw some penguins swimming around at one point. Backgrounds in this game are weird. And the soundtrack is not much better. This game only has about 3 or 4 songs, and some of them just have like these weird sort of, I don't want to say lyrics, but it sounds like almost grunts in the background of like a recording studio. It's weird. It certainly fits the rest of the game, but I'm not going to say it's one of Taito's best works. Seriously, Taito's in-house band has done some amazing work, such as Bubble Bobble, Ninja Warriors, Darius Gaiden. I gotta play some Darius Gaiden after this. Holy crap. But this one is just kind of fitting, but not great. Now, if you want a copy of Cameltry, well, good luck finding an arcade cabinet. I've never even seen one. But you can get this on Taito Legends 2 on the PS2, which is what I'm playing this on. It was also released on the Xbox in Europe, and you'll get a few different games in your little game pull. I've mentioned this a couple times, but you'll get Kadash, which is a game I'm always jealous my copy doesn't have. Seriously, I played that game when I was a kid and I loved it so much. Gotta find a copy of Kadash someday. But it's not a super, super cheap compilation. Even back in the day when I got my copy of Taito Legends 2, it was pretty expensive. Nowadays, it's at about $40 to $50. But if you can see it for less than that, there are a few really, really good games on here. And a lot of things that I consider to just be interesting archival games and not necessarily great games themselves. But Cameltry is definitely a fun one. And if that's not your bag, don't worry, because you can actually get this on the Super Nintendo, of all things. However, it was ported under a different name known as On the Ball. And the Super Nintendo didn't have a paddle either. However, as I understand, that version is compatible with the Super Nintendo mouse, so that could be interesting. I mean, it's not the weirdest sounding SNES mouse game I've ever heard of, and if nothing else, it's cheaper than buying Taito Legends 2, but you're also getting a lot less game, and it's probably not going to be arcade perfect because Super Nintendo. That said, it's a decent game, and if you can find it for a fair price, Cameltry is a fun and interesting little arcade execution challenge, and if you like those sort of things, I think this one is very much on the ball.